Good morning for a change, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Weather Center Nazario. A very, very happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of you out there. Thank you very much, especially on a day like today, for taking some time out of your morning to tune in to this latest Weather Center segment. Folks, we're going to blast through it this morning. We really don't have a whole lot to cover, but I still wanted to provide you with a brief update this morning before starting our own holiday travel here in the Weather Center as we gather with friends and family later on throughout the day today and into tomorrow. And I hope all of you tuning in or not are doing exactly the same thing with your loved ones far and wide. Let's jump right in, guys. We're going to go fast-paced. We have a low beginning to develop over southern Texas that's going to help to increase our rain chances over the Gulf Coast. No threat for severe weather at this time. I'll take you through some of the high-res model data to show you just how much shower activity is going to be associated with this. No cause for concern. And if you look down in the Caribbean, we did see a little bit of a brief flare-up in thunderstorm activity associated with what was once Invest 99L, beginning to propagate westward into Nicaragua, Honduras. We're starting to see a little bit more garden variety thunderstorm activity taking place in parts of Panama and Costa Rica as well. So be on the lookout for that. You could see some lightning strikes near your area, a little bit of heavier rainfall during short periods of the day today and into tomorrow, but no chance for any significant flooding or any kind of dramatic effects from this system as it rolls in. Even though we have this frontal tail draped across the Leeward Islands, parts of the U.S., British Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, I don't anticipate we're going to see too much significant thunderstorm or shower coverage with it because of the amounts of dry air funneling in along the backside of this and already entrenched across much of the Caribbean Sea. Down there near Trinidad, Tobago, Barbados, down in the Windward Islands, we have very, very small clusters of shower and thunderstorm activity popping off with another very weak inverted trough axis drifting across that general area. The ABC Islands could get a little bit of shower activity associated with this throughout the day today, but again, just your typical garden variety air mass thunderstorms that happen during the daytime, afternoon hours. Across the United States, we're waking up to some pretty phenomenal weather, especially down here in the southeast, but it also looks like in the New York area, if you're up there for the Macy's Day Thanksgiving Parade, we are looking at some pretty spectacular conditions for that. We could see some elevated winds, but the storm system that had once deepened down over the mid-Atlantic states, you can see that area of low pressure right here propagating off to the east-northeast, is far enough downstream to no longer provide any kind of significant effect to your local weather. So that Thanksgiving Day Parade should be very wonderful as we start Thanksgiving today. Out west, we have our next baroclinic system moving across the Rockies, probably increasing our precip in terms of snow and rainfall, especially over the higher terrain features. We're not looking at an elevated wind threat along the lee of the Rockies thanks to that cross-barrier flow occurring in parts of Idaho, Montana, spanning down southeastward into Wyoming and Colorado. A little bit of lee side enhancement, but the winds in the mid to upper levels are not strong enough to provide us with really substantial momentum transfer. So it's looking like maybe just a gusty kind of day with some rain and snow activity in your area. National Weather Service is still progging maybe a 2 to 3 inch accumulation across the areas that this system begins to move over top of. So as I mentioned, we're waking up to some pretty phenomenal weather this morning here in the southeast, particularly the state of Florida. We were back and forth throughout the rest of the week and over this past weekend as to whether or not we were going to see cold weather come in just in time for the holiday or if we were going to be rained out by our next potential lowrider system coming across the Gulf. And it looks like we managed to hit the jackpot because if you look at these temperatures, we're waking up in the mid to low 40s in the northern portions of Florida, mid to upper 50s in the central parts of Florida. However, it looks like South Florida once again was not welcome to the party and unfortunately are still waking up into somewhat humid and warm temperatures with low to mid 70s in the south and southeast quadrants of the peninsula. As you take this HRRR model through time, you can see that even though we will get a little bit of daytime heating, Central Florida should top out at about 68 to 70 degrees this afternoon. As we roll into the overnight hours of tonight into tomorrow morning, we're once again going to drop back down into the 50s with a more uniform temperature amount across much of Florida and the rest of the southeast for that matter, with all of us waking up in the low to mid 50s tomorrow morning for Black Friday as we continue our holiday shenanigans wherever you may be in the southeast. Taking a glance at our 0Z Euro, as we take this through time, you can see a little bit of that shower activity associated with the tropical disturbance moving into Nicaragua. Again, we're not looking at anything severe down in that area. You are going to see an increase in your overall thunderstorm coverage, but nothing that should last more than 8 to 12 hours. And as we go through time, you can see we are expecting another little spin up in the Gulf of Mexico to come towards us, even though the Euro does have a little bit of a concentration in the precip highlighted near where its center is likely to be. On our high-res model data, we're only looking at a swath of light to moderate rain showers, maybe an isolated thunderstorm or two at best. No cause for concern for us here in the southeast, and it is expected to peter off as fast as it came together. And as we go over the next couple days, it looks like we could get another low rider system across the Gulf Coast and the Gulf of Mexico, for that matter, up in our rain chances as we go into early next week, into the middle parts of next week. But all in all, guys, it looks like the severe weather threat has diminished quite literally for much of the United States, especially us down here in the south and southeast associated with our El Nino setup. You can verify this looking at our 0-0 across the lower 48. We have those snow and rain showers moving across the Intermountain West Great Basin area. Nothing in terms of severe heavy snow expected. However, as this continues to transition down, you're looking at a white Thanksgiving until our next system can finally undergo cyclogenesis over parts of Texas, the southern plains, where you could see that delineation between rain and snow right about through here, which is where a lot of our bulk polar air is advecting down or moving across the Great Plains down into the deep south, and that's why we're getting that little bit of intensification in our rain field over Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, the same general areas we saw that severe weather event a couple days ago. As you take this further out in time, we do have another nor'easter setting up for our northeastern states and the eastern Canadian provinces with a widespread rain-snow mix coming out of Canada, parts of Ontario, Quebec, the James Bay and Hudson Bay areas in the eastern half of Canada for that matter. If you once again look across the bulk of the United States, pretty much everywhere you look for that matter, we're under high pressure, guys, and very good conditions as we go into early parts of next week, with maybe an elevated risk for rain and some shower activity in the southeast associated with that very weak tail end of the nor'easter frontal system that tried to get into the low rider system in the Gulf going. Models are losing confidence that it'll become anything very organized or anything substantial for our weather pattern. Still worth noting, we're looking at a rainy start to our next week. You can see the same thing on our 06Z GFS as we go through time. Elevated rain risk for the southeast as that system tries to get going. Doesn't look to become of much over the Gulf of Mexico and for parts of Florida. That next frontal system is expected to transition all the way across the central portions of CONUS, beginning to form up into a nor'easter as those jets collide. You can see that 1,002 millibar low off the Manhattan coastline rapidly moving to the northeast and deepening down with 3 different jet axes supporting its center of circulation, its triple point, if you will. That's exactly why we're going to see rapid intensification of that system. So a very good wind, rain, and snow event for our northeast segments as we go over the next couple of days, starting next week, and as we get ready to move into December full force. And even on the GFS, guys, if you look over the Midwest, the Central Plains, moving into the Appalachians, we have a 1028 polar high that's really going to help to suppress any substantial weather activity. We have an upper latitude cyclone moving through parts of Alberta, Manitoba, associated with our northern branch of the jet, the polar front jet, as well across the United States, with the subtropical jet colliding with it over the deep south. This is actually going to be our northern branch system that's coming across central Canada, bringing elevated snowfall and elevated winds for those areas as it continues to move down into the Great Lakes and down across the northeast. But again, guys, you can see how far in time I'm going with that slider tool. We're not looking at any kind of substantial weather until maybe the 2nd of December, where we finally get our next major system, a cold pocket in the upper levels, a low pressure system at the surface that's really going to intensify weather phenomena for parts of the Pacific Northwest, California, and Nevada as that rolls inland. Here's our NSSL on the left and our HRRR on the right. We could see some rainfall with that system coming across the Gulf over the next 24 to 36 hours, but you can see none of the thunderstorm or shower activity, for that matter, is really getting itself going. It looks more elongated and stretched out with our subtropical jet helping to shear most of that activity off to the northeast. So all in all, it looks like it'll just simply be a gloomy end to our holiday weekend, and as we go over the next 48 hours, you can see some of those rain chances begin to work their way into central portions of Florida as we go through parts of Saturday and into Sunday. And then before we wrap up, we still have our potential subtropical system still highlighted for a 40% chance of development. It is going to be very interesting to see if this does try to organize. If you noticed on the satellite image, we do have a pronounced center starting to take shape out there. National Hurricane Center doesn't give it a full vote of confidence in terms of development anymore, especially with what we saw yesterday during my Weather Center segment. It looks like it will remain frontal for most of its life cycle as it gets closer and closer to the Azores and the Northeast Atlantic. So we're still keeping an eye out for you guys. We're going to see if we get any kind of enhancement from this system or if it breaks away and becomes its own singular entity. That's going to be the big area to watch in terms of whether or not it does become subtropical storm Vince or just remains a very, very disorganized area of low pressure with fronts attached to it. So all in all, you are looking at some enhanced activity with it, rain, showers, and elevated winds naturally because of the system propagating through. But all in all, folks, I don't anticipate we're going to have anything else popping up on NHC's homepage for us to track as we finish up the last week now of the hurricane season. I really, really hope and pray you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving today. Please take this time to really enjoy your friends and family alike. Whatever shenanigans you decide to get into, make it the best that they could possibly be. Enjoy this wonderful weather wherever you are in the United States and the Caribbean, here in the Southeast, especially with these cold temperatures rolling through, because eventually Mother Nature is going to reignite and we're going to have some busy weather activity coming up as we go through December and into the rest of the winter season. We'll see you again very soon. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time, especially on a day like today, to join me for this Weather Center segment. We'll talk to you very soon, guys. This is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.